Good morning from the other side of my office. I cleaned. It's been about a year. Well, not quite a year, I guess, since we moved in, but finally got to cleaning my office. It was easy to put it off since the family doesn't need my office to be clean, and so I focus on the family projects. But I've got a bunch of the stuff up on my shelf and, knickknacks, paddywhacks, and giving dogs bones all over the place. But we are in Matthew chapter 12. And we're going to start in verse 33. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. Now, this is a saying that Jesus uses often. He uses a lot of planting analogies and gardening and farming stuff, because that's what they knew. That's what they understood. And so, if you look even just back a little bit, right, we see this idea in Matthew 7. We see it where he says, beware of false prophets. A good tree cannot bear good fruit. A bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into fire, right? By your fruit you shall know them. And then he's going to go right from here into Matthew 13, the chapter with all the parables. And I'm not going to teach the parables now, since we'll be getting there shortly. But it's the idea of that bearing of fruit. You watch and you see the fruit, and that's what helps give evidence of the health of the plant. And Jesus, again, is kind of getting on these guys' case and just showing them that it doesn't matter if they have checked certain boxes. You can tell by the way they're living that they're not regenerated. They're not saved. Bless me. So he tells them, brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Man. And out of the good of treasure of his heart brings forth good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you'll be justified, and by your words you'll be condemned. Now, this isn't going to say that, well, obviously if I say the right words, then I'll be justified, right? Again, you can twist the context of what Jesus is trying to say. And it's also worth noting the audience. Right now, he's not speaking to believers. He's not trying to exhort the church. He's calling out the Pharisees. Context is so important in the Bible, because when you know who he's talking to, when he's talking to his disciples, sometimes he has this hyperbolic, again, like a very forward way with them, thrusting them forward to sanctification and holiness. Jesus has a different way of being very forward with the Pharisees, but he's calling them out and he's just kind of laying it down. But when you have the woman with the issue of blood, when you have the women who came and wept at his feet, when you have the centurion with the sick servant, when you see the people coming humbled and broken before Jesus, you don't really see any forwardness. You see a very thoughtful gentleness to him. And so context. As we study the Bible, we can't take verses and try and apply them in different ways in different places until we remember, who was he talking to when he said these things? There's context. And so I bring that up because, again, it's like, well, by your words you'll be justified, by your words you'll be condemned. But Jesus knew these guys' words. And I mean, there was no law saying they couldn't speak the way they were speaking, and therefore they felt justified because they hadn't broken any rule. But Jesus is saying, but look at the way you're talking. You have not broken a rule, but can you not tell because there's evil in your heart, these evil words are springing forth? It's not like they said a curse word that was against the rules, but just you hear it from them. The way they're behaving, the way they're acting, you can just tell. It's like, no, like you don't have God in your life and in your heart. And it doesn't matter what church you go to or how good your attendance is, or and again, these guys thought they had the boxes checked and so they were good. And this is what Jesus is trying to explain to them, is you can tell where their heart is at because of what is coming out of their mouth. That is the lesson of these verses. What is the fruit of the tree? Well, it's what's coming out of their mouth. That is the fruit that is being judged. That is what they can witness, look at, and judge it. Judge it like at the FFA, the 4-H fair or whatever, right? Where they have the apples and they judge the apples. That's the judging of the fruit. It's not, casting the fruit to hell judge. That's a different kind of judge. This is the assessing, evaluating, and then making a logical and wise conclusion based on what you see. I said it recently at church that I'm very optimistic in all things except for the salvation of people, because that's something I don't want overly optimistic thoughts to potentially dissuade me from taking proper action. When I see people who just are in a funk, when I see people who have certain behaviors, I make judgments accordingly. Now, I also, when it comes to just the fruit of the spiritual health of a person, I'm not talking about salvation now by no means, but there are things that you see people do that healthy Christians do, and you see things that unhealthy Christians do. And oftentimes, healthy Christians, now this is healthy. It's a high bar, but spirit-filled, healthy Christians who are on fire for Jesus and are at the, dare I say, the center of God's will. They smile a lot because they have joy. They serve with joy because it just makes sense to them. They give. They give joyously, hilariously, as the word says, right? A hilarious giver. Cheerfully, right? They give. They fellowship. They find as many opportunities as possible to gather together. That's what healthy believers do. And when people are in funks, you watch. They don't seem to have joy. They don't desire to serve. They don't even desire to fellowship. It's amazing how two different people, both Christians, both believers, will end up with opposite results to the same problem. I'm tired, I'm hurting, and I'm broken. I need to be at church. I'm tired, I'm hurting, and I'm broken. I need me time. And that's often what we find. And so this is the fruit thing. Now, and then there's the believer-unbeliever. This is what he is dealing with more so. But I'm just saying that the judging of fruit, that's what we need to do. And it's okay to do it because the spiritual man judges all things, we see in 1 Corinthians. And that's the idea is that if you're walking in the Spirit yourself, you're watching your brothers and sisters. You're watching the people who walk in those church doors, and you're going to make assessments, not to be judging. People, I feel judged at church. It's probably because they're going to hell and they don't like it when people tell them that. Or they're living in, you don't feel judged when you go to church unless there's something to feel guilty about typically. Or it's a really crappy church. That's an option too. There are judgmental churches, not saying they don't exist, that's for sure. But oftentimes, we need to be watching and looking at this fruit, paying attention to what's coming out of people's mouths. Joyous, Spirit-filled, happy Christians don't gossip. They don't slander. And dare I say it, they don't complain. I keep reminding my kids that complaining is a sin. Like, end of story. Do all things without complaining and disputing. Yeah, complaining is a sin. Now, people often like to defend themselves on that one, but it's complaining is a sin. Identifying problems and giving constructive criticism, that's not a sin. But complaining is. There's a heart difference there, right? Similar looking actions, but complaining is a sin, end of story. Identifying problems, bringing them to light, trying to help find solutions, that's not a sin. But at the end of the day, by their fruit you shall know them. Trees make either good fruit or bad fruit. And depending on the context, let's wrap this back around to the beginning. The context, when you're talking about looking at believers, we look at the fruit, and it's a spiritual health check. A how full is their tank check. But when you're talking about potentially believers and unbelievers, well, right there, again, you look at the fruit. And oftentimes that'll show you if someone's saved or not. Can there be people in this middle area where it's really hard to tell? Absolutely. There are lots of people that it's very hard to tell. Are they saved and in a funk? Or, immature, malnourished? Or are they not saved and just good at Christianese and doing churchy stuff? It's hard to tell sometimes. And so the best thing we can do is just get people out of that place, out of the weird gray area where it's hard to tell, and continue to encourage and love and exhort and rebuke and push along and pull along and love along and guide along and bear the burdens of as we move people out of the funky zone and out of the thorn-filled soil and the thistle and weedy soil into the fruitful soil that bears much fruit. That's what we want to see in believers. We'll get into that more as we hit Matthew 13. But we will be wrapping up chapter 12. We'll be in 13 by the end of the week. So there we go. All right, you guys. Have a great week. It's Monday. That means we've got like 5 more of these this week. Isn't that great news? I don't know if my internet reception is going to be horrible at the beach or whatever. So I'm going to be on vacation this week. So if something goes out of whack, I'll try and keep you guys posted as best as possible. But hopefully I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning at 7:30. God bless you guys. Take care.